Everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to our live coverage of the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial at a federal court in New York. This is our lunchtime show, even though they're not technically on lunch in court, but we are going to be taking your questions for the next hour and a half about what's happening in court today, what happened yesterday, what's been happening so far in this trial, and there is a lot that has been happening so far in this trial. To get you caught up to speed right now, as Sean Combs faces racketeering, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution charges, Jane, alleged victim 2 in this case, is continuing to testify. She is continuing to be cross-examined, questioned by the defense. And it's interesting where they're going. We're going to talk more about it. I do want to give you a heads up, though. Usually during this lunchtime show, we have Elizabeth Milner, who comes on to give us a breakdown about what's happening in court. She is not going to come on in the next hour. Why? Because they started late in the Diddy courtroom today. They started at 1 p.m. Eastern. So Elizabeth is going to be in that courtroom for the next hour. But I'll tell you what, as you know, I host Sidebar. I'm going to do a full recap of today's events with Elizabeth. That will come out later on tonight, so I hope everybody can check it out. But right now, she's continuing to be cross-examined, and the question becomes, what did she testify to so far? She testified that she basically was pressured by her boyfriend, Sean Combs, her lover, her partner. She had this relationship from 2021 to 2024 to have sexual relations with other men in front of him as he watched for his pleasure. The question becomes, was this consensual? Was she a willing participant? And any objection she had, was it an objection as a love interest that she didn't want to keep on doing these prolonged sexual experiences? Did she feel like a sex object? Did she particularly feel objectified and victimized after Cassandra Ventura filed her lawsuit in 2023? And does that prove that she's a victim of sex trafficking, that Sean Combs was using force, fraud, coercion to pressure her into sex acts, commercial sex acts that was happening in all different locations? Or was she upset as a girlfriend, as a love interest? And this doesn't amount to sex trafficking. That's the central question here. And we know that sex trafficking also makes up one of the underlying crimes of racketeering. The idea that Sean Combs ran this criminal enterprise, but that was a criminal association between him and associates and staff and assistants to commit crimes and cover them up, that he engaged in a pattern of abusing women, that there are at least 2 underlying crimes that he committed, whether it's sex trafficking, kidnapping, arson, forced labor, drug offenses. The prosecution needs to prove 2 in order to get racketeering. And then I will tell you, the most straightforward charge that I think Jane's testimony helps prove is transportation to engage in prostitution. That Sean Combs basically transported sex workers and her to different locations for the purposes of prostitution, for the purposes of sex work. You don't need force, fraud, coercion of that. I would say, based on her testimony alone, they've arguably shown that. Now, whether they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, that's a question for the jury, but I think that her testimony helps support that at the very least. But what are we hearing from the cross-examination today? Well, you're hearing Tenny Garagos, one of his defense attorneys, seeming to suggest explicit messages that she wrote, basically saying that she was a willing participant in these activities, that there was jealousy she might have had with Sean Combs engaging in a relationship with this woman named Gina. And so was her frustrations with these sex acts, these hotel nights, was it frustration as her as a victim of sex trafficking or her as a girlfriend? Let me bring in right now our panel to break down your questions. I'm joined by criminal defense attorney Lawrence Zimmerman and also criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Serena Townsend. Great to have you both here. Thank you so much. Okay, so first thing, we got some questions coming up. Let me start with you, Serena. This is from Merlene Spies. Why do you think that Diddy is still paying Jane's rent? Do you think there is more to it?
That is an interesting question. I mean, I don't know if he just has like auto debit going on with this rent situation. I don't know. I think it's hard to tell why he's made a lot of decisions in his life, including who he's paying and what he's paying for. So I'm not sure. I think there's always a possibility that, he's hopeful if he continues to pay for her and for the things that she wants, that perhaps she'll give favorable testimony for him or do something for him that she otherwise wouldn't do. One might be able to argue that, but it's impossible to know for sure.
Lawrence, there's been a lot of text messages that were sent from Jane to Combs where it's clear she was not happy with these hotel nights. She talked about, essentially paraphrasing, that she felt objectified, that all of this is desensitizing sex for her. And you could argue, is it because she felt that she's doing all these things and yet he's seeing people on the side, she's not being treated as fairly? Or does she feel that she's being pressured into this against her will? The reason I say this is she's being cross-examined by Tenny Garagos, and I'm going to read a little bit of the transcript right now, a little bit of the court updates. And by the way, for the next hour and a half, we're going to be reporting in real time what's happening with the testimony, and we break it down. Ms. Garagos asks her, and you said if you don't get your A out of the island, no party, right? Right. Sean wrote you a note that you said meant the world to you. You told KK, meaning Christina Coram, his former chief of staff, you told KK you wanted to make it cute and romantic. Yes. The Valentine's Day hotel night, having two men there, was that your idea? It was. After these nights, it was crushing to see these things. Like Gina posting the love bracelet on Instagram, right? Yes. How's the defense doing at trying to say, and I hate to use this expression, but I don't know the best way to say it, that she's not expressing her reluctance as a victim of sex trafficking, but maybe as, again, I apologize for this, an upset or disgruntled girlfriend? What do you think?
Well, I don't know what you're apologizing about, Jesse, because that's the point the defense is making with all these cross-examinations. A lot of the people that have come into Diddy's orbit have done so willingly, knowingly, consensually, and they wanted to use him for furthering their own interests, right? The last question you asked, my question is, why is Jane Doe still, whatever her pseudonym is, still accepting rent after all these years from a guy who abused her and trafficked her? So I think that this raises a lot of questions. I'm not defending anybody who's abusing women, but I'm saying as far as your question's concerned, is they're making valid points.
Well, Lawrence, let me follow up with that. The idea would be he had financial control over her. She couldn't, earn her own living on OnlyFans or other things, that he's paying for her rent. It's a form of control. It's a form of manipulation. Are you sold by that?
I mean, listen, there's a lot of smoke in this case. Obviously, there's a lot of bad stuff we're hearing, that he's not the most moral person in the world. But as an adult, at some point, I mean, you're accepting payments. Is that financial control? Because you could just leave and go do your OnlyFans thing. Nobody's stopping you. No, I mean, she is texting him about wanting to do these things, agreeing to do these things, and setting them up. I mean, I understand there's a gray area there, but they have to prove he's committing a criminal intent, and that's what they're getting at. And she's a consenting adult. At what point is she saying it wasn't consent? Looking back, I mean, I think one of them said, looking back now, I'm not sure it's consensual. Is that what we're saying is consent? Not sure. Or looking back, it's not consensual. I mean, how about at the time? I mean, there's a lot of questions for me with what I've been, say, hearing, reading in the paper, or you're watching your show.
We got a super chat question. I'll throw this to you, Serena. Thank you so much, from Maria Chavez. Thank you, Maria. Is, in BI's, there anything so far that the defense can use to request a mistrial?
Well, there are things that always come up during a prosecution where a defense will take advantage and say that a mistrial is warranted. I know with previous witnesses that testified, there was some talk about how the witness was putting on a front, putting on a show, was not who she said she was. Any opportunity like that is going to rise to a level for the defense to ask for mistrial. Of course, at the close of the prosecutor's case, when they rest, the defense is also going to ask for a mistrial. In fact, they might say that, the judge should give a trial order of dismissal, which means that the prosecution, even viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to them, did not make out the crimes that they're alleging that P. Diddy committed. So every opportunity that the defense can take to ask for mistrial, they're going to ask.
Well, they asked for one. They asked for one this week, Serena. They basically said that certain witnesses, their opinion was, perjured themselves, focusing on the testimony of Brianna Bongolan, who claims that she was dangled off a 17-story balcony by Sean Combs, or Mia, who claims that she was sexually assaulted by Combs. The judge rejected that. And I guess the question would be, they're free to cross-examine these witnesses, right? And they did. They thoroughly cross-examined these witnesses, arguably really hit upon the testimony of Brianna Bongolan especially. That's not grounds for a mistrial. No, do you think the judge made the right decision?
The judge made the right decision there. Anytime a defense is going to say, well, this person took the stand and lied, that's really a decision that's up for the jury to decide. Whether somebody is credible or not, whether they're telling the truth, whether they lied, that is a jury question. A judge is not going to throw the case out simply for that allegation.
Lawrence, I need
I
your
add something.
help. Oh, well, yeah, let's talk about that. So, Lawrence, go to that, and then I have a question for you, Lawrence. I need some help. I need some
Sure.
clarification, but first, if you want to jump on that.
The U.S. Supreme Court last year, in a case out of Oklahoma called Glossip versus United States, has said that the government, if they put somebody up and their story changes and they know that, they have a duty to correct it. It could be prosecutorial misconduct. So I think what happened the last couple of days, I think what you said, the woman who's dangled was maybe Cassie Ventura claimed she was there and they had evidence that she was not at all, and the government knew that. That's the issue for mistrial. Whether it's wrong or not, I'm not sure. But if the government knew it, put up false testimony, that could be grounds for mistrial. And the U.S. Supreme Court case helps them.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that yesterday, too, that there would need to be some sort of instruction provided there. Let me ask you this. There has been a lot of talk about what's going on with respect to one of the jurors. I think this is juror 6. I could be wrong about the number, but Lawrence, I need your help here. So it's juror 6, okay? There was something that happened yesterday, didn't really know, came up today again before testimony even began. The prosecutor here, Maureen Comey, seems that the government doesn't want this juror dismissed, removed from the case, but found there, quote, appeared to be a lack of candor with the court. And the defense seemingly has accused the government, again, this happened at the beginning of the day, of trying to excuse this juror because they're a black juror, or they are, I mean, that's quite the allegation, basically saying the prosecution's trying to exclude a juror who, I can't tell if the motivation, they're saying the motivation was because of race, or, hey, listen, the end result would be if you get rid of a juror who is a black juror, that's a big factor in this case. I have no idea what's going on here. Do you have any idea what the issue could be?
Not necessarily, unless they're not, maybe they're not paying attention. Maybe they feel like that she's not making, maybe the juror, I'm saying the juror's making faces. It's hard to determine what's happening without really knowing the issues. But clearly, the government has found something about her, and they obviously don't like her as a juror for some reason and want to get rid of her. Obviously, the defense likes this juror, and it's very hard for a judge to remove a juror in the middle of a trial, even though there's alternates. They have to make a pretty good showing. That could be reversible error if not careful.
Yeah, it's interesting, and the judge said that they'll figure it out before the end of the weekend what to do, so we'll probably get some update on that. Okay, hey, Serena, I got a question for you, and what a compliment you get here. This is from M. Pathry. Hey, Serena, my favorite attorney after Jesse, of course. Sorry, Lawrence, but this is what can you get? Hey, Serena,
I'll take second place.
my favorite attorney after Jesse, of course. You're super smart, discerning, a great communicator, and well-versed with the law. Enjoy your inputs very much. I thought there was even a question. It's a full compliment
you can
session
read that all day, Jesse. That's fine.
I may have to. By the way,
Thank you so much.
I'm not on off enough for people to really remember me.
Well, listen, let's see. Maybe at the end of this whole show, Lawrence, you'll get a kind comment. We'll see. But Serena, I'll throw another one to you because we have a lot of questions coming in right now. Okay. This is from Bella Reyes. This is to you, Serena. Is Tenny Garagos measuring up to the task? I guess it means measuring up to the task of cross-examining Jane.
I think she is. I will give her her flowers, her props. It is very difficult to cross-examine, an alleged victim of sexual assault. It is very, very difficult, especially in a case that's being watched by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people across the country. That adds pressure. I think that she's handling herself beautifully. I think that she is approaching this in the exact right way. She's not being too aggressive and offensive, but she's just aggressive enough to kind of tell the jury that she's not buying the story and that neither should they. You do have to walk a very fine line in these cases in particular when you cross-examine somebody like that. And so she's trying to base this all on facts and evidence and not really insult this woman while at the same time trying to discredit her. It's not an easy task, so I will give her props.
Lawrence, going back to you, this is a question about the jury. This is from Legal Code. If I had a sister on the jury, would she be in trouble for talking to me about what's going on?
Absolutely.
So how would the
100%.
court find out? And could she even say, hey, listen, I'm not going to tell you what's going on, but there's a big case happening. It's in the news a lot. It's about a big celebrity, a big rap star, federal case. I'm going to be out. Can she even say that she's on the jury?
I mean, I haven't seen any court orders, but I don't see why she can't say she's on the jury. I mean, it's obviously public knowledge. People walk to the courtroom or see jurors walking to the courthouse. I think that's absolutely fine, but can't talk about anything that they've seen in court. Can't talk about the case. That is absolutely a violation of their oath. They could be removed, held in contempt. That would be bad.
How would they find out about that?
I mean, gosh, I mean, so many different ways I've seen. I mean, maybe somebody hears about it, comes forward. Maybe the juror says, "Oh, I was talking to my sister yesterday about the case." Another juror tells. I mean, I've had cases where one time in a case where a juror came up and told the judge that they were informed by the clerk of the jury that about something that happened in court and that was a violation. So I mean, there's all different ways. I was once walking in a court and this was years ago when Facebook first came out and saw somebody post on Facebook back when you could check in somewhere. You see other people checking in and posting, and then someone posted saying, "I'm a juror in federal court today. Can't wait to hang 'em high." So I saw that and I went immediately to the chief judge and I told the chief judge about it. So I mean, that's a problem. People are silly. I mean,
Yeah.
people do stuff all the time that we find out, posting on social media. Of
Well, by the way, Lawrence, do you think there's a possibility these jurors are going to come out and speak after the trial?
course, it's their time to make money and shine, right? I'm sure they will.
Oh my goodness, you are so, what's the word I'm looking for? You're so,
Realist? Realist?
no, what was the word? I was going to make a joke out of it. You're so, I forgot the word. I'll come up with it. My joke will hit, but not land when
I'm
I
not
come
saying
in.
you
What was the
shouldn't.
word? What was the word I had? I don't remember. But yeah, you think that they are.
Not everyone, but they
Oh,
may not want to be
you're
bothered.
so jaded. You're so jaded. That's what you are. You're so jaded.
That's not, I'm jaded. I've just seen these high-profile cases. They come out, someone writes a book. Look what happened in the Murdoch case, where you had the clerk writing a book while it was going on.
Well, that
I
is
mean, it's
true.
terrible. These are serious issues. These are people on trial for their lives, and they have people who are accusing somebody they may have been seriously sexually abused. It shouldn't happen. But I'm just saying what I've seen
No,
historically. I don't doubt it.
no, look, I don't disagree with you. I was just making light
People are still making money in the
of
OJ
this.
case, writing books, doing documentaries this past year.
Yeah,
But frankly,
yeah.
there's a good documentary that's too.
Yeah. Serena, we got a super chat question from Richard S. Law. Richard, thank you so much. If there is a mistrial due to jury nullification, can there be a retrial? And then any updates on Juror 6? Love the show. We miss Elizabeth, though, LOL. So I mentioned the update on Juror 6. The court seems like they'll work it out before the end of the weekend, or before the weekend. So if there's a mistrial due to jury nullification, can there be a retrial? And explain what jury nullification is.
Yeah, so I think that question, it's a good question, but it confuses things just a little bit. So let me clarify. Jury nullification essentially is as simple as this. It's when jurors listen to a case, and even though during their deliberations at the end of the case, they decide internally that they believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the person is guilty, they vote not guilty anyway. So they essentially are saying, like, we understand this happened, but for whatever personal reasons, religious reasons, moral, ethical, whatever reason I have, doesn't even have to make sense. I'm just going to vote not guilty. I don't care. And so in that situation, you would essentially need a unanimous jury to vote not guilty, whether because of jury nullification or they legitimately believed that the case was not proven. And in that situation, it's not a mistrial, of course, it's a not guilty. And then he just walks free. Now, if some of the jurors decide they don't want to vote guilty and some of the jurors decide they do want to vote guilty, and we have a hung jury, then that would be the cause of a mistrial. And at that point, the prosecution could decide whether they want to plead the case out and offer something maybe better to P. Diddy so that they don't have to go through this thing again, or they would have to retry him all over again.
So we have an update in court. As I said, we'll break down these updates in court, this testimony in real time as we get it. Tenny Garagos, Sean Combs' defense attorney, questioning Jane, says, here you are planning to reach out to Sean and perhaps reach out to the Italian, who's apparently one of these sex workers. Jane replies, I was still doing that then. He says, can you FaceTime? Yes, that's what he said. 10 days later, you had another hotel night? Maybe. Let me refresh your recollection of seeing Mr. Combs and not having a hotel night with him. It certainly did. No hotel nights until the end of June? Maybe. Then Garrigo says, hey, here you were planning to reach out to Sean. Oh, that's just a repeat of what we had. So where are they going with that exactly, Lawrence? I mean, the hotel nights, for the prosecutors, they're basically saying these are crime scenes.
Sounds like that Ms. Garagos is setting it up, that obviously that Jane was setting up hotel nights on her own. Even though she claims she didn't want to do it, here she is contacting the male escort, wanting to see what he looks like, FaceTime them, I guess maybe see if they're for real, and she's actively involved. I mean, doesn't sound to me like someone who is, again, I'm just basing it on what I'm hearing. I'm not saying it's true, but someone who's being sex trafficked by Diddy unwillingly, unwilling participant based on where this cross is headed. That's what she's trying to point out.
Serena, we have a follow-up question to when you were talking about a hung jury. This is from Denise Lopez. I'm perplexed. Question, Jesse, if the outcome is a hung jury, what happens to Diddy? Does he go home?
A good question. He's probably not going to go home. No. What'll happen is, again, the prosecution will have to make this decision about whether they want to pursue. The case doesn't go away, essentially, with a hung jury. Only the trial does. The case still proceeds, so long as the prosecution wants it to proceed. So the trial goes away. The trial ends with no verdict, essentially, and the prosecution then has to decide. Now, again, a defense could then say to a judge, we want to make a bail application. We think that because of this result, it's favorable to our client and it shows that there is, doubt, maybe reasonable doubt here. And so he should be able to walk free, or you should grant him low bail or something like that. Do I think that's actually going to be a successful argument? I don't, but I wouldn't put it past the defense to try. They should absolutely try. But most likely he stays in pending the ultimate resolution, which is going to either be that the prosecution dismisses the case, they try to plea it out, or they go back to trial all over again.
One of the things we do on this lunchtime show, besides taking your questions and getting great answers to it and also reporting in real time what's happening in court, is we put up polls. One of the polls we put up is, do you sense the jury is becoming less attentive after 4 days of Jane on the stand? 51% say yes, 28% say not enough information, and 19% say no. In your experience, Lawrence, if you have an important witness like this who's on the stand for quite some time, direct examination, cross-examination, redirect, do you know if the jury becomes less attentive and gets the point of it already?
Well, first off, I thought you were going to say we're going to eat lunch together just now, but I guess not. We did a poll. But yeah, I mean, listen, today's day and age, obviously, that being in the media, people's attention is very short. Having a witness on the stand for 4 days could get pretty monotonous, repetitive. You could definitely start to lose the jury for sure. So I think with an important one, you want to really try to make it. I mean, there's a lot of information, obviously. Instead of 4 days, maybe a day, maybe 2 days. It's still a very long time to testify. I get it. They think she's important, but you can tell when jurors are getting bored. They roll their eyes, they fall asleep, they stop taking notes, ask the judge to take more breaks. It just depends on you. You can see it in the courtroom. You can see it in the jurors' faces when they get bored and they're not paying attention. It's sometimes not obvious, but it can be very obvious depending on that person.
Well, Serena, the question does become, if she's providing testimony that's not so clear-cut, was this consensual? Were you a willing participant? Was this sex trafficking? Was this just a different kind of sexual relationship? You do wonder, the more the jury hears and hears maybe new messages or questioned about these messages in different ways, is it value added? Why do I say that? We have an update from court. So Tenny Garagos asked Jane, and I'm going to have to paraphrase here because it's very, very sexually explicit. Here, Mr. Combs says, he's basically telling her that he's touching himself, thinking about, quote, how nasty you're going to be to me, right? Jane replies, yes. He says, call the Italian or Paul is free, and you liked Paul is free, right? Yes. So he gave you a choice, and you chose, yes. So seemingly like you had a choice about which performers are going to come here. Garagos asks, he responds, I told Paul 11 p.m., is that okay? And let's watch porn first, right? Jane replies, yes. He says, the London Hotel, what would you get? Stripper shoes, shorts, maybe whips. Garagos asks, why shorts? I was really turned off by their shorts, so I got other shorts for them. It was not so fun to wait for them to be, let's just say, sexually excited. I started to get things on the side so they could get sexually excited. I got pills at the store, rhino pills. So again, look, Serena, this is very similar to Cassie, right? Preparing things for these hotel nights or freak-offs in Cassie's example. It's not the classic case of sex trafficking, as people might know, where someone is kidnapped by this organization or group of people and shipped off to clients and thrown into a room and drugged and forced to have sex with people. There is an element of participation. The question becomes, was this really consensual or not? When you hear messages like this and they're having, and Combs at least seemingly providing them a choice, was it a choice? I guess that's a question. Did they really have a choice in all of this? Was it consensual? Again, it's a classic question, but we keep having to raise it here based on these messages, Serena.
Yeah, absolutely. Consent is a major, major sticking point in this case. And the more actually, the more they drone on and ask a ton of questions and muddy the water, the better it is for the defense. The prosecution wants a nice, clean cut case with no questions asked. And the defense, even though the jury might be getting a little bored, subconsciously, they're probably thinking, you know what, there's a lot more to this than what the prosecution gave to us. And it's important for us to hear this side of things too. What Ms. Garagos is seeming to be doing is explaining to the jury that Jane had agency in all of this. She had the ability to make decisions, and that she did, in fact, make decisions, and that Diddy asked her what she wanted rather than forcing her, compelling her, paying her off. All of the things that the prosecution is going to list happened. So I do think that even though it's, kind of going on and on for a while, it's important for Garagos to be doing this because it just allows the jury to see that there is another side to this story and that this woman probably had a little bit of agency in all of this.
We talk about what are the biggest questions in this case. Lawrence, listen to this. So we got this question from Maureen Grogan. Do you think that they've proved RICO? That's the biggest question of all. Remember, top charge, potentially life in prison. Before you answer that, let me just tell you a poll that we put up. So the poll that we put up is, which charge do you think the feds have proven so far? 46% transportation to engage in prostitution, 39% say sex trafficking, and only 14% say racketeering. Where do you stand on the racketeering charge as of right now in this trial?
Through watching you guys, right? So I'll do my best. I think to Serena's point, as we'll talk about agency, that's certainly a big thing. If it's consensual, there's a lot of the case. I don't know if they could prove it up if the defense could tear apart that a lot of this was consent. I think anything related to Cassie may be a problem because certainly I think her testimony comes across a little bit differently than some of these other ladies afterwards. I think she's obviously the most problematic for a lot of reasons, and number one is because that video certainly gives a lot of support to her allegations, makes her much more credible, right? So I don't have a great answer for you, Jess, on whether they've proven it or not, just because here we are so far not done with the defense's case. I will say to what you guys are talking about as far as sex trafficking is concerned, you were saying, Jesse, that this doesn't seem like the typical sex trafficking case. I do a lot of these cases, like people who are charged with sex crimes. And in my experience, I feel like the sex trafficking statute has been overused and misused a lot like RICO. And that's why we're seeing more of them. But I think when this was drafted as legislation, it was meant more towards like what you talked about, Jesse, women, being taken against their will and doing things that were never consensual. And here we have a question of consent, and that's very questionable based on what we've seen in these text messages. I think when Teddy Garagos is crossing about these racy messages, I don't think jurors are falling asleep. They're probably sitting up and paying attention to that. She's getting special kinds of shorts, pills to get these escorts, I guess, more erect faster. I'm assuming that's what she means. They're not wasting time. And those are things she's texting about and doing and getting. Doesn't sound like somebody who doesn't want to participate. If you didn't want to participate, why are you getting those pills? You wouldn't want them to to get sexually excited at all.